Hello everybody, thank you for joining me in the class today. Today we're drawing or painting on a black canvas, so that's going to be quite interesting. I'm quite looking forward to that. It's not something I do often. And then we're going to be painting a cute little diggy dog. So let me show you what the picture looks like and then we'll take it from there. So I found this awesome photo on Pixabay. Isn't it just an amazing photograph? I think it's going to make a really striking painting with a high contrast. So all that black gave me the idea of, why not? What the heck? We'll paint on a black canvas today. So let's zip over here. So basically what I've got here is, this is the printout. So if you're a patron, you can go and download the PDF, which has got the reference material, plus it's got a tiled reference. I'm painting on a 400 by 300 millimeter canvas, which is basically a 12 by 16 inch canvas. So there's a tiled template for that, and then there's a sketch template that looks like that as well. So generally what I do, alright, let me show you the canvas as well before we go into specifics like that. So you can buy the black canvases, which is all great. I've just painted mine. I used just some Paynes grey, and I painted my canvas. And I just zapped him with the hairdryer. So now he's ready to go. Alright, so let's go back to here. If you see my arms coming out from what seems to be the wrong side, it's because my canvas is sideways today, and I'll explain later why. When I'm doing something like this, I'm trying to get a likeness of the dog. So I'm working quite accurate, and that's why I'm using a sketch template. I want to get this, make sure everything is in the right positions. So what I'm looking for are the main features of the dog. Obviously outlines like this, and then like here by the nose, you need to put in like there's that little dent in between the two nostrils. Here, found lines like this, stuff that you want to mark. Then I'm also going to mark things like hair directions. So to do that, you can use just standard carbon paper, just normal pin carbon. Because it's blue and you're working on a black canvas, it will stand out quite nice. What I'm actually using is dressmaker's carbon paper. What's nice about this, because it's a water-based paper, or I suppose you can call it a paper, eh? The ink, whatever that they've used on here, is water-based. So it's an ink, it washes out. So it's really easy when you use this to work with it, because it just disappears as you paint. And if there is any left over, you can just gently take some water and make it disappear. So what I'm using here is, this was just a little gadget that actually came with the dressmaker's carbon paper. And the carbon paper comes in different colors: white, blue, pink, red, yellow, and sometimes green as well. So the first thing I'm going to just transfer is always the main features, like the eye and those found lines and so on. Essentially what I've done there like that. From there, I've got all these different hairs, right? And these hairs are contouring to the, or conforming to the contour of the body. So what I do is I always give myself a few little lines like this, so that I know the different directions as we go along. So you'll see I have added just a few little indicators on your template like this. And that's where I know I'm going to get these directions correct. You don't need to put too many. Usually on transition points, like over here, I can see there's quite a few transitions happening where the hair's changing direction. So it's great to have just some of those directions plotted in. Oh, and you know what I've done? I haven't moved my paper up. So all these ones I drew here are gone for nothing. I'm sure you've also done that. It happens to me often. You get so carried away with drawing the lines that you actually forget about moving your carbon paper. But luckily it's nice and quick to sketch like this. There's just a few little dabs and dashes that I'm adding in. Alrighty. So Phil is asking if you don't have black paint. Yes, just or if you don't have a black canvas, just paint the canvas. That's what I've done with mine. I'm painting in acrylics today. So that's all I've done. Alrighty, it seems like it's quite light, but I can still just make them out, and that's good enough. Alrighty, so there is quite a glare on the canvas. So I think what I'm going to do is just do a little adjustment here. Just to reduce that glare, so that it will affect the colors you see ever so slightly, but don't worry too much about that. We're only working with essentially white today. White and black. Alright, so I don't even think I'm going to go to the palette, to be honest. I'm using Paynes grey, and I'm using titanium, and then there is a bit of color in the eye. So I think maybe we'll use burnt sienna for that. But mostly we'll be using just the white and some Paynes grey. So the brushes that I'd use for a painting like this is generally just fine liners and rigger brushes. Fine liners like that. Like that guy over there. Or rigger brushes with the longer hairs. And then for just larger details, just a fine round like that. And if necessary, just a soft, flat bristle brush like this. So Phil's asking, would you use a black paint? Would you mix a black color? I just use a tube of black, Phil. You can use the Paynes grey. Another favorite one that I've got is a Mars black. You can use that. In any black will do. This is one of the times when it's convenient using the black than trying to mix it yourself. But obviously, if you don't, then what you can do is you'll use some French ultramarine. I think that ultramarine has seen better days, eh? Let's use that tube. I think I've squeezed the tax out of that one already. Yeah, those two over there. French ultramarine, raw umber. Just mix them 50-50. And that'll give you a Paynes grey. But yeah, we'll just use what's in the tube. Alright, so I want to show you just a little brush that I make. So I take an old rigger brush. When they're old, they start doing this. And then you tend to throw them away because they're useless. You can't do any fine detail with them can't do any fine detail with them anymore. But that's not true. You absolutely can. So I'm taking this and a knife. So what you're still interested in are those central hairs, because they're still pointing where they should, right? So you're going to take these outer hairs like this. Just take some outer hairs like this at a time. Take your knife, and as I'm holding them like that, I just chop them off. Turn the brush, pull those guys back, chop them off. And now you can decide how fine you want this new brush of yours to be. The more of these hairs that you chop off, the finer lines you're going to be able to do. So what you do is maybe chop off a bunch, and then you give him a test to see how he works. If he gives you what you want, then you can stop. If he doesn't, then you just continue and chop off some more hairs. Oh well, now I've got two. Alrighty, so what is important here is that you get the paint to a good consistency, because we're going to be doing lots of lines today. So you have to be quite patient. So I'm just going to take just an old lid That way I don't have to keep moving all the way across to my palette. Let's see if I can zoom way out. It's just so you can see what's here. So you normally have your palette here, and here's your canvas, right? So I'm just going to mix some paint in here. Then I don't have to keep moving all that distance. Now I can just two hairs, move this along as I go. And it's much quicker and easier to work like that. So I'll put just a blob of white there. And a little blob of Paynes grey there. So today what I'm going to do is I'm going to use just a little bit of retarder. I don't usually use retarder, but it's really super hot here by me today. So I'm just going to add a few drops over there. And that'll allow me to work longer with the same paint. And I'll still continue using my water as well. So I'll get some water down there. So I'll bring some paint into that. What I'm looking for is a consistency of an ink. It mustn't be super watery. But it mustn't be too thick either. So it's a bit of experimenting when you start painting to figure out whether you've got the right consistency or not. Alrighty, so let's take let's just do that for now. So what I'm going to do, just to get myself into the swing of things, I'm going to take a little bit of the black into the white like that to mix up quite a light grey. And I'm going to use this, and I'm just going to gently just plot out some of these hairs, or some of those lines that I drew initially. Because they do tend to, because you've got your hand over here, they tend to disappear on you. So Morena's asking, why am I using retarder and not just water? With the water I have to keep adding new water because it's so really hot here at the moment. The water evaporates, right? Where the retarder doesn't. So can you see it's just like dotted lines. Just to make sure that we stay on the right track. So I can see already some of my marks have started disappearing on me. So these little dotted lines over here just keep me on track. And why am I doing dotted lines? Because you're going to end up having hairs and stuff, so you don't want to have a line, a solid line. That you have to somehow try and get rid of. So here's a little tip. If you are using a black canvas, what I tend to do with a black canvas is I tend to give it a coat of paint anyway. And I'll tell you why. As you paint, you'll often want to afterwards see, oh, you know what? I should actually have gone maybe a little bit, I've gone maybe a little bit too light in an area. So I need to darken this up. And how do you darken it up? You go over it with black paint, right? So as you now go over it with black paint, what happens? It looks different to the canvas. So then you end up having to paint it anyway. I think adding these has also helped you now easier picture the picture where everything is. Yeah, that should do there for now. Right, so I'm going to stick with this. I'm going to maybe make it just a little bit darker. Not too dark though. Just like that. So what I do, Morena, that's why I'm still using water. The retarder, it just delays the drying action of the paint. But you still need to use water to adjust its consistency. So let me put you down on I'm just going to move over to that camera for a second. What I want to do is just zoom in on that nose area. So that I can show you the technique. Alrighty. So today, you really do have to be patient. So let's just put that down over there so you can see what I'm doing. So you're going to pick up some paint on your fine liner. Ideally, you'll be using one that's got nice long length of hairs. And that way you can do multiple hairs before having to pick up new paint. You're going to just use little flicks like this. Now you want these flicks to overlap each other. Can you see how I'm putting the hairs down? They're all generally following the correct direction. The correct direction in this area over here is doing this. It's gradually changing to do that. And then over here, it's gradually straightening out to meet the nose. But I'm not going to put them down just plain smooth like that. I'm going to use little different directions. Overlapping strokes. And that's going to give me a natural hair effect. So as you start off like this, now it's important to adjust your the consistency of your water. So I'm going to go over to my little rigger brush that I'd modified, because he's got nice long hairs like that. So that's because I've trimmed him, he's going to give me nice fine hairs, and because he's long, he's also going to allow me to do multiple hairs without having to, before I have to reload the brush. Let's do that. Alright, so what's important here now is that we try and get roughly the same amount of hair as what you see on the photo. It doesn't have to be exact, but just more or less. Right, so earlier I said to you, it's a first for me. I'm painting with my canvas sideways today. When you're painting, because you're doing all these different angles and stuff, turn your canvas as you work. So I can't do it now here while I'm giving the class, because you'd get seasick. So most of the hairs are running in this direction. So that's why I've turned the canvas sideways, and I'm actually painting sideways today, because that's a more natural action for me for my hand. So in this painting here, we've got, okay, that there is quite light, so let's leave that there for now. Morena's asking, would you recommend only doing dark colored animals on the black canvas for dramatic effect? Well, as far as a black background is concerned, no, you can do any animal in a black background. That'll always give you a nice dramatic effect. If you're doing a different colored animal, let's say the dog wasn't black, then obviously this skin area here, you're not going to do fill that in black. You'd fill it in with whatever color the dog is. Right, so in this area here, there's quite a bit of light hairs. And they come out from the opposite side of the mouth. So I'm going to just fill in that little bit of a line over there. And now as I come out over here and I add these hairs in, I'm adding them in at different lengths and different directions. Let's just go to there. While I adjust the other camera, let's go a little bit wider. So when I'm painting like this, I like to have a reference close by. So I've actually got this printout sitting next to the canvas over there. It makes it easier for me to judge all the different angles because you have so many different angle changes, right? There's also just another little bit over there, because here you've got the other side of the mouth. And then from there, that other side just sort of, because it's in shadow, it just sort of peters off and disappears. So what I'm doing is I'm making sure there's very little paint on my brush. So the paint that's coming off is very little. If too much paint comes off, I'm going to just tap it like that with my finger to lift most of it out again. Okay, let's continue along this line over here for a while, because there's quite a bit of hair over here. So now check the length of the hair. You see it doesn't quite reach onto the other side, and that gives you that separation where you've got a little bit of hair there along this line here, and that separation with that hair over there. And then of course you always have just a few little hairs that are crossing the divide. Alright, that's it. That's enough there for now. Let's continue down here. So can you see we've got a really strong light from the top. So here's lots of light, and as we come down here, less and less and less light. So that's why I'm working with a grey. We're essentially first painting all the shadowy bits at this stage. Okay, let's continue down this direction. So you want to put these hairs in at the correct lengths as well. at different places on the face, the hairs are different lengths. So now, depending on the length, is how long a little stripe you're going to put in. Okay, so what I'm looking at now is just the areas where I can see there are hairs. Okay, then there's going to be times like this when you put in, like that guy over there, he's now too long. So I'm just going to take some black and you go over him. And that way he'll soften up. I also keep reminding myself that because I'm working in acrylic, this paint is going to dry a little bit darker than what I initially see it. Alrighty, let's go a little bit, just a little bit wider. Because there's lots of light at the top, you can see lots of hairs. As we come down here, there's less light. So we have to put less hairs because we just simply can't see them. Alrighty, so up here, just tons of hairs, eh? They're all quite light. So I'm going to stick with the grey for now. And that'll give you just extra depth and dimension in this area here. Moed, this is absolutely real time, my friend. It's absolutely real time. Because now you'll have, as you paint the lighter hairs, the darker hairs underneath that are now cast, but essentially the light hairs are casting a shadow on these darker ones. So when these guys still stand out, then they'll make sense. Give you that extra dimension. Okay, so can you see now how I'm gradually just changing the angle as I go along? So that these hairs all gradually conform to the shape of the face. So often I'll just even do this, just to give myself that general direction change without having to first fill everything up. So Alan is asking, just a quick question, have you used airbrushing in your work? I've seen airbrushes used in others' work. I haven't actually used airbrushing, to be honest. I've always wanted to try. Okay, so I'm just giving myself a few of those little directions. So just plotting them out. Because it comes to here, and here are some distinct, very distinct hairs, like this. And then from there, there's a little darker area here by the eye. And then here from the eye, you've got all these other changes. So let's just stick to this area here, and we'll complete the mouth area. So now that I've got my directions, now I'm going to just gradually fill up this top area. It gets lots and lots of hairs. And that's why I said you have to be patient when you're doing this. Sadly, there's no shortcut. So Doug is saying it takes a certain touch to make those strokes without getting a blob at the start. Yeah, I'm using the tip of the brush, and that's why you use the rigger brush, because it gives you and the thin paint, because it gives you almost like a bit of a pen effect. So as you're using that tip, you some more of the paint sort of runs down. It's always difficult. It's a bit of a trade-off. You make the paint too thin, then it becomes too transparent. So then when it dries, it disappears on you. You make it too thick, it doesn't come off the brush. So there's that fine line that you have to just keep adjusting and testing. Here in the beginning, once you've got that feel, then you're A for away. But you can see as we go along, I'm consistently, every now and again, I'm adjusting the consistency of the paint. Right, so as I come down here, it's darker, so I'm going to add just less. Just a few little lines like that. Okay, so those hairs over there. Changing direction. Flattening out quite a bit. Paynes is asking, what color canvas would you recommend to paint a white dog with brown markings? If it's lots of, let's go back to here. Let's continue in that area while we chat. So here you've got this little bit of let's just do that. You've got this little bit of background. It must be some of his like his body or whatever over there. That's shining through. So I'm just going to take a little bit of this, just on a fine round brush. I'm just going to add that in here, like as a glaze. Very light. So I'm following that shape over there. If you've got lots, Padmini, let's get back to your question. If you've got lots of white, then I would go for a darker background. Having said that, it also depends on what kind of a atmosphere you want to create. Because I mean, you can make a fun painting. Then you could use a bright blue background. You know, if you're painting the dog with maybe a bow tie on or something like that. But always, the main advice would be a contrasty background. That's what you're looking for. Something that's going to give you contrast. To make the dog stand out as best you can. The name of the brush that I'm using, not the one now, this one here is a fine round. This one here is a rigger brush. Then if you rewind the video, you'll see how I've modified it. But normal rigger brushes would also work. I'm just showing you a way to sort of give an old brush new life. So there is a little bit of this, almost like a hazy color over here. So I'm adding a very light glaze with essentially no paint left on the brush. So now can you see what's happened? It's just making that edge of the face visible. Very, very, very low contrast. You see that? That's great. So now instantly you've got that whole face defined just with a very light wash. So who was it? Mighty Fury was making a good point. When you're picking up your paint like this, if you're scared it's going to give you a blob in the beginning, what you do is you pick up the paint and then you first just touch it. Because let me see if I can recreate that. As you do this, the paint starts running down the brush because your paint is thin, right? So then it's forming a blob, and it actually is forming a blob. Let me go over to that view over there and try and show you that blob. He's obviously hanging at the bottom now. So I don't want him to end up on my canvas. But there's now a blob of paint that's ended up over there. So let's just do that. So then you take and you just tap your brush somewhere else. Then that blob will end up over there. And then you continue. Alright, let's go back to wide again, because we're not going to continue down this end over here for a while. I think here I can add a little bit of that glazing in over here as well. Just a little bit over there. Tiny, tiny touch. Just to define that back edge of that mouth over there. Alright, let's continue down here and add more of these hairs in. All along this line here. Alrighty, so Padmini's got a Jack Russell with the brown markings. Yeah, I'll go for a, but just, you know, like I say, as long as it's giving contrast. I mean, often a nice cream kind of background can also look good. So these hairs sort of just peter out over here, then you can't see them anymore, roughly in this vicinity. So I'm going to take that and just make sure there's less and less paint on the brush as I go down in that vicinity there. Then here I'm going to just add those long guys in afterwards. So let's just create the mass, and then you create the stray hairs that are doing their own thing. And Primrose saying she can hear, they can hear a dog in the background. Yeah, that is my dog wanting to eat somebody. I don't know who or what. Alright, let's continue adding mass over here. Because there's lots of light, there you can see lots of hairs, so you have no choice. The only thing you can do here is just paint. Just keep building up. That's kind of why I chose this picture. It was not just dramatic. It's also that there wasn't that many hairs. As you go down into the darker areas, they become less and less visible. So if you had to sit here and watch me paint every hair all the way down from the top to the bottom of the dog, you'd definitely fall asleep on me. It'd be like watching grass grow. So that made this one a really nice a really nice painting for a class, because there's enough here for you to see the technique without having to literally see me paint every single hair. Right, so as we come down here, I am adding just a few little hairs. There are some hairs. You don't want this to be nothing. But just few and far between. To make sure that it stays on the dark end. Alrighty, I'm going to wash my brush because now we're going to go over to white paint. Or maybe we should tackle that nose before we do the white paint. Hey, then at least that area will be finished before we move on to this area. Alrighty, so let's go to there. So that's quite interesting that, eh? You've got all these little dots and things. So I'm sticking with the grey. What happens with these dots is they change shape depending on what angle you're seeing them at. In other words, perspective is at play, right? So here they looking towards you. So you can actually even use a bit of a bigger brush. Even use this guy over here. So here you're seeing them sort of directly from the side. So you're seeing the actual shape. So they're pretty much round. So can you see I'm just putting them in at just little dabs and dashes and dots. Now here, as we go along, we're starting to see them more across. So let me see if I can demonstrate that. Maybe I can use this. Hopefully the paint won't fall out on me. When I look at this upright, right? It's a perfect circle. So that's what you're seeing over there. But now as we curl around and we're seeing that nose over there, this is what's happening to those little dots or those little circles. They're gradually becoming more oval. Until eventually, when you're seeing it right on the top of the nose, that's all you're seeing. It's just little lines. So look carefully on the reference and you'll see that. Just mix up some more paint. And then over here they're curling this way. So we're seeing them lines as lines in that direction. Where at the top, the lines are in that direction. That's all just perspective that's at play. Alright, so here you've got those two different sides of the nose. So here I'm going to just use little dabs and dashes, but going more in that direction, more downwards. Then you've got the same thing happening here along the center. So first just establishing that line, but I'm doing that line in a dotted effect. So it's not solid. Making sure that it joins up with that. So here we want to do a little bit of a shading. So I've got this edge over here more solid. And as the paint starts disappearing off the brush, now I'm going to start adding smaller dots on the inside. So because there's less paint on the brush, it's automatically going to come out lighter and give me a little bit of a shading there. The same thing happens over here. And you can also, don't be shy, adjust your paint. Let's do that. Adjust your paint to get a darker version as well. If you're scared you're not going to be able to go light enough with less paint on the brush, then by all means go ahead and darken that paint up a little bit. Okay, so there's quite a bit of stippling, just tiny little dots as we go around. So here you want to create a distance between this nostril wing over here and then the inside of the nostril. So Ramona is asking if the video stays up. Yeah, at the moment these videos are staying up. If you want to watch the edited version of the class, so I cut out all the transitions and so on, and sometimes I add extra little bits in afterwards, then I'll show that inside the edited version. And if you want to become an edited version, or if you want to see the edited version, then you can become a patron on my website. The link is, see if I can bring up a link for you. There's the link to my website, Ramona. Then obviously if you're being a patron, then you also get access to the reference photos and the templates and stuff for this class. Okay, so as I'm moving up here, I'm going to start stretching those lines out in this direction. Where here they were there, they were there. Alrighty, so as we go around here, now we're starting to see them all flat on again, so they're gradually becoming larger and larger. So there we went really big. Again, I gradually go smaller and smaller and flatten them out. But there's lots of these dots, so don't be shy. in the end of the day, what I try and do is I don't try and make it look too spotty. It becomes a bit of a mess. So yeah, initially we've got a bit of a spotty effect, but as you're now going to add highlights and stuff, then that spottiness will soften out. So when you're really close, it does appear spotty, but when you're standing back, it doesn't. Okay, so over here we've got that transition where the nose and ends and the hair starts again. So I'll leave that for now. Let's continue over here. So here you've also got the same spotty dotty effect. This area here is pointing towards the light, so he's bright. And then as we come down here, it gets darker. So we are working with a shadow color, so I can just continue all the way down. No problem. Like that. That's fine. And here I want to just get a little bit more of a shading. So I'm going to add finer dots and further apart. And that'll give us a bit of a looking in effect into the nose, where it's solid over there and less. So in other words, it's showing you less and less light can get into the nose over here, like that. Mighty Fury is asking if I'm going to be adding black over areas. Yes, I am. We're definitely going to do that later. Alright, so now we've got that shadow of the nose all sorted. So each of those little dimples on the nose pick up a highlight if they're pointing towards the light. So now I'll use the neat white. And let's see, where are the highlights? Plenty over here, hey? And then less as we move around this way. As that nose curls away from the sunlight, less and less. And then obviously here we've got plenty of lovely little highlights. So I'll start here where there's lots. And I'll just continue to add this lovely sunlight on. So I think what I'm actually going to do, you know what I'm doing. So I'm gonna let's pop that down on a wider view so that you can see the effect as opposed to seeing the dots. Okay, so up here we're looking across these guys, so there's going to be plenty. So I'm adding lots. As we come down here and around by the nose, it's gradually curling away from the sunlight. So we're seeing less and less sun. So I'm just adding a few little random dots going down that direction. Here, let's add just a little bit, just a few little dabs and taps, just to get the touch of sunlight running down there. Awesome, let's continue along here. Are you starting to see the effect now? It's pretty cool, eh? Okay, now remember, as we come around here, we're starting to see those guys not side on. We're starting to see them more from the front, face on. So now I'm starting to see more distinct little these here are essentially highlights on those dimples. So I'm sort of just highlighting those little dimples that I painted with a larger brush. Okay, here can add more white. The more dots you add, the more sunlight there is. So when you're doing something like this, what I want you to do is stand back often to make sure that you've got enough sunlight or not. Because when you're up close like this, all you're seeing these little dips and dabs, and it looks quite abstract. And not particularly accurate. But when you stand back, then you can see whether you're doing a good job or not, or whether you still need to add more in certain areas. As I'm putting this in, I'm almost like doing it in a bit of a shaky motion to make sure that I'm getting that dotted effect. Here's a little bit of sunlight just on that edge over there, giving you a nice little bit of a sunny effect. Okay, let's start adding this highlight in over here. So now look what happens. This is also curling inwards, right? So I'm not adding this highlight right onto there where I ended the, let's go closer in. I'm not adding these highlights there on the edge of those shadow ones. I'm adding it just off. And what's happening now is it gives you a bit of like a shading. So it's from light, medium, and dark. There's your 3 tonal values that you need for a 3-dimensional effect. The same thing as I go down here, just gradually adding less and less. Yeah, that's cool over there. Okay, so Doug is asking, I see you using straight white. Seems to work very well for this painting. Mostly do you tend to mix a little yellow in with your white in most cases? Doug, it all depends. It all depends on the color that I'm seeing. Alright, so I just want to continue painting while we're chatting. So here, can you see there's more sunlight and stuff over here? So I'm going to go over to my rigger brush again, and I'm going to start adding those sunlit hairs in over there. It all depends. More often than not, like in the nose area, what happens is if the dog is outside, then that highlight that you're seeing on the nose is actually sky color. So I'm actually adding a little bit of blue into it. In other words, I'll be highlighting it with this color here that we've been painting today with for the shadow color. But like I said, it all depends on the sunlight. whatever light you've got is going to reflect. Here's quite a bit of hair in this area, and it's really light. So I'm not being shy with the lines, because it's now adding lots of lovely sunlight into this area over here. Maybe we should stand back on this bit, hey? Yeah, no, that's a good view. Okay, so now you need to be careful with this sunlight. The sunlight doesn't go all the way along. It gradually disappears on you. So as I'm going along here, I'm adding less and less. I'm adding bigger gaps in between these guys, until eventually there's nothing. So that, in other words, oh, there's just a nice little random hair over there. Got to put him in there just for some character, hey? Okay, and we've got some highlighted hairs in this area over here as well, so I'll continue with them, add them in. They aren't, can you see, they're quite individual in this area over here. So I'm not adding tons of them in. And then as we come around here, they gradually start getting more and more. There's almost like a little bit of a line happening over there. Brian is asking, do I always use the grey before I use the white? I use a shadow before I use a highlight. That's a better answer, Brian. Today it's a black and white painting, so the grey just happens to be the shadow color. Okay, so now I'm looking at all those lighter bits, and look at this beautiful sunlight that's coming on. Okay, and then there's this here's more in shadow and stuff, so there's just one or two random little hairs over there, and then from here they start to come more. Let's put that over there, and you can see the whole picture. So here, there where they come out, I'm not putting them in a perfect line. It's a bit haphazard. Can you see that? They're coming out at different places. Stand back again. Now you can see the nice dotty effect on the nose. But when you stand back, it looks natural. So I'm being quite meticulous with where I'm putting down these highlights at this stage. There aren't tons in this area. We've already got the hair effect with the shadow guys that we put in, right? So I'm not adding tons, just selective hairs. As we come to the top, there obviously we've got more sunlight, so there we'll have to add some more. Right, here we can start adding just a few little whiskers in. So whiskers, you've got to put them in just more bold than the surrounding hairs. So I'm following roughly what I see on the photo, but not exact. Let's just do that, eh? Okay, there's some really long ones, but I think we need to first tackle that area before we can put in those long guys over there. So let's stick to here. Because I don't want to work over, that paint is not going to be wet. I don't want to work too much over the wet paint. Okay, so this area here is pretty much solid white. So I'll go over to a big brush, save myself some time. Big brush, not even really any water in it or anything. That whole area there is just solid sunlight. Yeah, that's great. That saved me 5 minutes of trying to put in hairs in that area with the rigger brush. Alrighty. So now it's really important. Let's go back to our close-up view again. And let's zoom in on that as well. Let's go to there. It's really important to get all the tie-in correct over here. Here, you've got just those little bits of hairs, because it's short hairs here, right? So you've got those little bits of hairs that are just doing their own thing. So in this area here, those little bits of hairs are sticking up in this direction. So you start from inside this mass that you've created there, and you pull them out like this. And you must try and give them different directions as well. They're not all perfect directions. Some are a little bit more upright. Some are even looking in the wrong direction. But generally, they're going that way, upwards. You pull it in so that you can't see that line over there that you've initially formed anymore. Here, look what happens. They go this way, then they go this way, and eventually you've got a few guys that are going forward. So you've got a little transition over there. And that little transition happens all the way along here. Can you see that? So you get, here it's just a bit of a quite messy. Really quite messy. So you're going to have some hairs going this way, some hairs going this way, and some hairs going in the correct direction, and so on. And that's how you create that transition here between the nose and the bridge of the nose and the hairs. Can you see how messy it is? Okay, and then as we get to here, that little transition ends. So now you can go back to adding The same here as what you're adding before, just lighter ones. So let's go back to there then, so that you can get the overall picture. Alright, so Alan has now asked an interesting question. What do you do if you've put in a whisker wrong? The first thing I'm going to do, Alan, is I'm going to ask myself, does it matter? Let's face it, you're not going to suddenly put a whisker going out in that direction, right? You're going to put it in generally in the correct direction. So I'm going to ask myself, does it matter? And if it does, if I've really hashed it up, maybe you've painted it and it came out with a random blob in the center or something. Then remember, I always paint my canvas beforehand. And same as I showed you earlier, there was somewhere over here a line that came out too thick. I'm going to just carefully go over it with a black, and I can hide that, and I can make that whisker thinner. Let's do that. Maybe you've got that blob over there. So I'm first going to leave that to dry now, so that I can paint over it. So we'll continue here for a while that little bit of paint over there is doing his drying thing. Okay, so Marina, you asked me earlier, why do I add the retarder in? Can you see at the moment, I've been able to paint just by adding water into my paint all this time. And it's really hot here today. It's well in the 20s degrees Celsius. Normally that thin layer of paint over there would have become tacky and dry ages ago, right? So that retarder has now just stopped that drying process. So now I've just been able to, without worrying about the paint drying on me, I've just been able to concentrate on keeping the consistency of the paint correct. Right, can you see there's a blob that came out a little bit thicker than what I ideally wanted. So also, I'm going to just leave him there for now. So that's the same ended up with the same situation as that. Okay, so as I go up here, getting that little edging right. And I'm checking where is all this sunlight. Making sure I'm getting them in the right places. Because there's lots over here, and then it gradually just sort of peters off, tapers off as we go out this way. So the minute it's tapering off and stuff like this, now I'm going to start working a little bit more methodical. I'm going to slow myself down. Let's get a broader view over there. Nick is asking, how many years have I been painting? Nick, I started painting in 1996. My first painting was I don't have it anymore. Or I do have it, but I can't find it. It is here somewhere. It is a dragon that I painted, a dragon and a princess that I painted on fabric with fabric paint. Fabric paint was quite a thing at one stage, and the ladies were doing that. So I had been drawing for a few months, and it didn't turn out too bad. I caught the hang of the shadings quite quickly, so that was nice, and that encouraged me to continue. Can you see how some of these hairs are just sort of curling downwards in this vicinity over here? Alrighty. Starting to look nice, eh? I'm quite happy with how it's coming out so far. So we'll just continue all this all the way up here. So here we're not really seeing those individual hairs and things anymore, hey? So I'm almost just going to use the brush flat, in a flatter configuration. Gee, that's a big word, configuration. And just holding it a bit more flat, so I'm using a bit more of the side of the hairs as opposed to the tip. I think we can even get some grays in between that. So let's pick up some grays. See, that's now started to that has now started to go a little bit tacky because we haven't used it for a while. So let's just get a bit of juice back into that. Let's just add some grays here in between this. I like to have some grays in between these real highlights because it just adds extra depth. Right, so we'll leave that at that. There for now, like that. Now we can go back to the white. So this is sort of just a mess. There's a bit of a lighter area running down there. And that lighter area meets up over there. And then I'll slow down again just to get the edge right. That should be fine. That should be fine. Okay, then as we go here, now we've got some of those darker hairs that are overlapping these lighter hairs. So as we get to this area over here, we need to add enough hairs in here so that when we bring those dark hairs over them, you'll actually be able to see them. So by all means go ahead and paint this a little bit further than what you need it. What's my favorite thing to paint? My favorite thing to paint is actually still lifes. I really enjoy painting still lifes and flowers. But I enjoy painting animals as well because it's a technique that once you've got it, you can paint without having to really concentrate too heavily. Because you're spending a lot of time building up the texture. So I also enjoy painting animals. Right, so here's lots of angle changes. So take your time and get them right. Here's a very light area, very distinct light area over there. It comes down this vicinity here. And as we end up in this vicinity here, I think all that there may even be dry. We'll check it as we get there. So by now you should be starting to get a good feel for how to do these hairs. And this is the point where you want to start gunning it, really just zooming along and getting this finished. So you have to keep asking yourself, can I zoom here, or do I need to take my time? Do I need to slow down? You need to realize when you can zoom along, or when you need to just go a little bit slower and a little bit more methodical. Fury is asking, have I tried black 2.0? No, I haven't. No, I haven't. Could be a fun exercise. It would be nice for the really probably a nice modern paintings and stuff. Alright, so as I come down here, it's getting less and less. I'm just tapering that off so that we keep that area over there dark. That's all in shadow. Okay, so let's go to over there. So for my background, I actually used Mars Black. So I'm just going to nick some straight out the tube because I don't need much here today. For now. So hopefully that's dry. So I'll just come, put some down, and just wash the brush to make sure that there isn't any accidental white on it. And I'll just carefully thin him back down again. The same over here. You can just add some marks, just like that. Fella's asking, where am I? Can this painting be done in oils? Yes, absolutely. But you do want your background to be dry, Phil. Make sure that your background is dry. Otherwise, you can, but then you have to use a mile stick, and it's really a pain. It's so much easier doing this hair effect with a dry background. Alright, so I think while we've got this Mars Black, I'm going to, because that's what I've now used for my background. If you've used whatever black you've used for the background you would need. I'm going to now show you how to do like little effects and adjustments. So I'm going to take some white, or some water, sorry. I'm going to take some water, work it into that. Let's take a look. Just want to adjust the one camera. come to a new spot. So let's go to there. So that is that area there underneath the chin. Can you see you've got some hairs, darker hairs overlapping that? So we're going to take some of these and we're going to add some of these lovely overlapping hairs over this. So now I just need to fiddle here until I get the consistency of the paint right so that it flows nicely off the brush. Look how cool that looks. Now you've got an extra 3D effect because now you've got stuff in the background and things overlapping it. You don't have that much opportunity to do that with a painting like this, you know, because everything is so close up. It's not like a landscape where you've got lots of things that are overlapping each other and so on. And this is a way to paint some detail in the dark. Stand back and you can see the effect. That's pretty cool, hey? Alright, then often you'll have situation like, let's go to there. Can you see, like here, there's a little bit of a darker patch over there. So again, you're going to take your, either your black or your grey, whichever one is going to work best. And you're going to come in here with those dark and you're going to add a hair effect into that area over there. So you can think of this as sort of painting negatively. And that's a nice way how you can paint like imperfections and stuff that you see on the dog. So I'd often do that. And then just to make sure it looks natural still, I'd come back in with one or two lighter guys over that. Just one or two. And that sort of just sinks it in and makes it look natural. So Diana's saying, I thought you were a kitchen artist. In other words, I paint paintings that look nice in the kitchen. Yes, I do, and that's what the like my cherries and the still lifes and stuff. That's where that all comes from. But I must say I have diversified quite a bit since then. It's the same as over here, as what we did at the bottom there. Here you're going to put in these darker hairs that are over here. But now look here, I've slowed way down. It's not a mass that we need to create. Maybe I can get a closer view of that one for you as well. So just bear with me. Let's go to there. Okay, so I'm taking these dark hairs and I'm just gently bringing them over here. So as before, I'm giving each one a bit of a different direction, making them overlap each other. And so on. Look how looks quite fancy. Alrighty, so here we've got white hairs, but then you got all those black hairs overlapping it. So what you can do, just to save yourself some time, is let's pick up, let's go to, where can I put it? Over there. So let's go to here, and I'm going to pick up, say, a grey. And I'm just going to work in a bit of a glaze. But now look how I'm doing it. I'm adding it in that direction of the hairs, so that it's naturally got a bit of a stripy effect already. And just there, by doing that, I've now painted all those underneath hairs already. So that saves me a ton of time. And I'm just looking at the picture and seeing, where do I have lots of those hairs, those lighter hairs that are shining out between the darks. And I'm adding more of this in those areas. Like that. Nick is asking, how long would it take painting like this take? That's a difficult question to answer, Nick, because I've been doing this for ages, so it's not going to take me that long. It'll maybe take me, where are we now? We're at 2 hours in, so I would say I'm probably just less than halfway. So it's probably a 5 hour or so painting, 4 to 5 hours. But I don't want you to look at the time that it takes. I want you to look at the final result that you get. That's the important thing. After you finish painting this, in 3 or 4 days or a week's time, you've forgotten how long it took you to paint this. But you're never going to forget what the painting looks like. The end result of that painting lasts you forever. So if a painting like this takes you longer to paint, you just charge accordingly. Because it's the end result that counts. People don't pay for your time when you're selling artworks. They're paying for the painting. So if you give them a good painting, they'll be happy to pay for it. Okay, so can you see how I'm now adding that black over the light? And that's giving us that effect over there. Alright, so I'm going to stop at that. I don't want these classes to get on too long. You can see the techniques that I'm using. Let's go to there and there. So here's the reason why I paint the background. Can you see I've got some white dots over there? Somehow I've got a little bit of paint over there. So this is why I paint the background. Now I can just touch them up. And you'd never know they were there. They're gone forever. When that paint dries, you never know there was I had an accident over there. So you're going to continue using this effect in this eye area over here. That's exactly the same thing as literally more of the same. So let me show you how to do that eye. How does that sound? So let's go to there. And there. Alright, so for this, I'm going to use just a bit of burnt sienna. Hey, we're using the palette. Maybe we're only using a tiny little bit of the palette, so let's do that. So I've got some burnt sienna there. And some white. Not much, I mean it's just a small little area anyway. So if you are enjoying the class, don't forget to do that. And I can notify you when I bring out new classes. Okay, so for this we're going to have to use just a fine liner. So yeah, I'll stick with this guy. I think it's quite a biggish eye there, so I'll stick with that. So now we're on a black background, and now we need to do all these light colors here. So I'm going to start with lighter colors. I'll often even do this. I'll give this guy just a layer of white. Because many of the colors that you're going to be using will be transparent. So if you were to paint them onto that black background, you're not particularly going to see them, right? So if I do this, and it doesn't have to be solid. It can just be a very light, thin layer. It just gives you a base to paint on. So now if your transparent color does shine through, there's white underneath it, and that'll make it look bright. So I'm just going to do that, and I'm going to quickly zap this with a hairdryer. Okay, so I'm going to take some burnt sienna. The outside edge of the eye is darker. So I'm going to work that in. So the only problem with the drawback of when you adding that white onto the background is that now you can't add water into your paint because otherwise it's going to lift up what you've painted. Okay, so I'm going to put that outside bit in there. I can see some, there is browns over here. It's a bit lighter. So I'll just do it in a glaze in this area over here. I'll be perfectly honest with you. Most of the time when I'm doing an eye, I'm literally just copying what I'm seeing. Okay, let's see. It's lighter in this area over here. And it is in a bit of a stripy effect over here. Again, I don't usually worry too much about getting that stripy effect in the eye. More often than not, you overdo it and it looks like wagon wheels and it doesn't look natural. So I try not to concentrate too much on getting that. I'll just do this kind of a thing. Can you see it's not particularly stripy? And that's fine. Hi Fiona, welcome. Magali. Okay, so I am seeing a bit of yellows in that, so I think I'll get a bit of yellow ochre. Yellow ochre and white. So as you can see, I'm literally just putting in the colors roughly where I see them. So little touches of yellow over here. Let's see, let's take a bit of yellow ochre and burnt sienna, pop them together. They'll give a bit of a brighter brown. Yeah, it's got a nice color. I'm liking that. Acrylic likes to be built up in layers, so that's why I'm building this up in little layers until eventually it's going to look right. It is an unusual eye, this one. I have to admit, it's quite an unusual eye. Okay, let's give that white another layer so that he can brighten up a bit more. And this is where oil trumps acrylic. With the oil, you would be able to paint this all in one go. The colors would be instantly nice and bright. Okay, so can you see? I'm making sure this line effect is not too prominent. That should be fine. Alright, so we've got a funny highlight over here. It must be... Your highlight is usually what reflects. So let's just do that. It's usually something that's reflecting, right? Like a window, or if you're outside, maybe you'll have even some trees and stuff that will reflect inside. So that is a very odd and unusual reflection, isn't it? So I'm going to modify that. And let's do, say, something like that. That'll look like a window that's reflecting. Alrighty, so now we can go back to our little tub, because we've got some greys in this vicinity. That white of the eye area. There's some greys over there. All the way along here, there's really short little hairs. So I'm just going to use a tapping motion. You can't see the individual hairs, so just a little tapping motion like that is good enough to create a bit of a texture over there. And that's all you want, is just that little bit of a texture. So it goes to around there and it just disappears on us. Comes around here, gets thinner and thinner, and also just disappears on us. Okay, let's stand back again. And now we can go back to our rigger brush. That paint's now been standing a while, so I'm just adjusting its consistency. And again, yeah, it's probably a good idea to add yourself some shadow colors underneath. Here you have lots and lots and lots of angle changes, so you have to just take your time, be patient, get those angle changes in. Okay, and then as we come around to over here, they darken up. So now I'm going to have to go over to the grays. This here is not in sunlight now. Okay, so these all can you see you've got, there's an angle, there, and then there. So here's lots of angle changes in this vicinity here, so you have to really pay very close attention in front of the eye. So I'm working slowly and meticulously. Here I'm going to take some of these grays and work it over and into those light guys over there, and that will form us a bit of a shading. Here's quite a lot of black hairs in that area, so you can do that same technique as over there, to be honest, to get those black hairs sorted over there. Now these guys come out around here. I'm not going to do all this because it's more of the same. I just want to get enough around the eye in so that you can see what I'm doing. Okay, so I'll stick with the grey for now. Here we have quite a few little transitions happening. We've got shorter little hairs happening over here. So this is all grey hairs. Very, very short hairs as they come out over here. And then these hairs quickly change direction. Let's go to there so you can see it. So it's all still grey paint. Quickly change direction until they end up going in this direction and become the eyebrow. So the eyebrow, you've got hairs that are going like this. So there's the eyebrow itself. And same as what we had with the nose. There's a little bit of a transition where your eyebrows, some of them curl down. So you've got all these little direction changes. In general, they're going this direction over here towards the back of the eye. Like this. And then some of them will curl down and point in, and some of them they'll quite distinctly overlap the eye like that. Alrighty, so that's, and then from there they continue again. Here, this is skin, this area over here, so you've got to look really carefully. With this dog, you can't see it, but there'll often be just like a little bit of a highlight in this area over here, because this is now where your tear duct and stuff is. So this little area here would tend to catch just a little bit of sunlight and become brighter. And then there are little bits inside here that also just catch a little bit of light. So I like to just dab and tap a few little goodies inside there, just wiggles and squiggles, tap it out, and that just shows you that there's something there. It's not a black hole, It's just there's something there. Okay, that was not all shadow colors, right? So here we've got all these lovely, beautiful highlight hairs coming out. And can you see they're quite individual? So I'm slowed way down. And I'm putting them in meticulously to get them accurate and the right amount. Not too much and not too little. Just keep comparing with what you're seeing on the photo until you get the right amount. Okay, here there's a few little lighter guys as well, peeping out in between those darks. Especially in this area over here. But everywhere there's odd little lighter bits. So it's very gentle touch on those guys. There's a little something over there. We can't quite tell what it is, but oh, what the heck. If you see it, we put it in. So like there, can you see there's a little bit of a rounding from a construction line? So I'm going to take my background, the black from the background. I'll just turf it. Paint him closed. Right, let's stand back. Let's go to there. Maybe just one thing I can show you, and that's the ear before we call it a day. Because the ear is now, it's not quite as in focus as what you've got the rest. So let me get a close-up of that. Let's see. That should do the trick there. I think what I'll do with this is actually I'll just put my printout next to it. It'll be easier for you to see what I'm doing. So I'm going to take just a soft flat brush like this. And all that is grey. So I'll go with the grey. And because it's out of focus, it's almost like what we did there on the forehead with the longer hairs. So I'm just going to wiggle and squiggle this in. Just using the tip of the brush. And as you wiggle and squiggle this in, what's going to happen is you're going to go over some places more than others. Some places you're going to put in more paint because you've just picked up new paint, so that's automatically going to come out lighter or brighter. With the other ones, the paint has now started to run out. So it'll automatically become less paint on the brush. So you're getting all these lovely textures that you see there for free. How cool is that? Like it when you get stuff for free. Yeah, sweet. Bring that in over there. I'm going to bring a few little lighter guys, but not too much lighter. In other words, I'm just taking some white into that grey to mix a lighter version. It's not as bright as anywhere else. And I'm just going to squiggle now in a few of these lighter guys as well. Very quick, and can you see it's quite out of focus? Nothing is in detail here. What you put in detail is the nose area and obviously the eye. The eye is always your focal point. This is just it doesn't need to be detail whatsoever. And there we go. Let's step back and see what we've got. Alrighty, so you're going to just continue with that little bit of hair over there. And then your diggy dog is going to look awesome. Let's see if I can just reduce some of that glaze that we've got over there. We can go to there. Awesome. So I hope you enjoyed that lesson. If you have, you may be interested in my dog portrait painting course. It's also in acrylic, but you can follow along in oil with that one as well. So if you go to paintbasket.com, I'll post a link there in the chat box for you. Where's my keyboard? In the course, I go into a lot of detail how to paint the dogs in color and in detail. Maybe what I can do is let's do that. Then I'll show you what's in the course. It's $47, but it's 20 hours worth of training. So I'll show you how to paint the border collie. And I'll show you each step absolute in detail. Then we do a Labrador. And then there's a whole bunch of studies. How to do the nose. How to do real detailed wrinkles and eyes. Look at the eyes. You see how we get those eyes looking nice and realistic. Show you how to do wet hair. Look at those eyes again. I'll show you how to do the long hair. And then we end off the course with a full project, which is this German Shepherd. So go and take a look at that. If you enjoyed today's class, you'll definitely enjoy that course. The link is in the chat box, or if you're watching the replay, it is in the description. A lot of people that have done this course are actually painting. They're painting dogs on commission already. They're making good money. Morena's one of them. If you got any last questions, go fire away. I'll answer them for you. Yeah, there's quite a few people, I'm sure, that are in the class today that have already followed it. Patricia says she can highly recommend it. The dog course is brilliant. So Kamlish is saying the painting behind me is beautiful. Are we doing it in future? We sure are. This is let me just get it. It's a little bit wet, so I have to be careful of the trees. This is an oil painting class, which I've just completed for the patrons. So I'll be editing this next week and getting that up on the website. So if you are a patron, the courses unlock gradually on the website. So you do get access to the dog course, but only in month 5. There's other courses that unlock before the dog drawing course, like the portrait painting course and the dog drawing course and so on. So you do get access to the dog painting course at Online Art Lessons. So if you are a member there and you can either be patient or you can become a year patron. If you pay for the year in advance, then you'll instantly get access to it as well. But if you want to keep the course, then head over to paintbasket.com. That link that I've showed you. You can buy the course there and you keep it. It's yours. Yeah, it's very affordable. Like I said, it's 20 hours. I can maybe show you even what's inside the course. Let's go to here, and I'll show you the modules that you get inside the course. I really went into a lot of depth in this course. So let's just open that up over there. So there's all the course modules. So I'll show you how to paint in acrylic, and I'll also show you how to convert it to use it in oils as well. So there's theory and practical. I'll just do that. You can pause the video and see what's inside the course. Everything is an absolute ton of detail. Look at all those videos that are inside the course. It's well worth it, I promise you. I spent months working on it. Well, there you go. There's my pitch for the day. I'm horrible at selling stuff, but oh well. I got to sell what I've made, eh? Yeah, and there's PDFs that you download as well with all the references and so on. That's all there. Sketch templates, you name it, it's all there. Alrighty guys, I'm not seeing any new questions coming through, so I think let's call it a day. I think you've learnt a lot today. I hope you've learnt some awesome new techniques, so don't throw those old rigger brushes away, hey? There's lots of life in them yet. Now I've got two, so that'll last me for many years. Alrighty, thank you for joining me in the class. I'll see you next time.